The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this episode is one of our Q's of the Force. What does Q stand for? It stands for questions, and also stands for grammar today, I guess. Anyway, we're excited to talk questions of the Force. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok, notoriously bad at grammar talking, I am, and I'm happy to be discussing questions.
Yeah, well, you're just talking like Yoda. It's great. It's great. All right, we want to let you know, as always, that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. You can get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. We are continuing to recommend Mission to Disaster by Justina Ireland. We're going to be diving into that one on our deep dive episode this very week. If you want to listen first, you can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. And that is all of our offers for now, but there will be more offers in the future. Ken, are you ready for questions and perhaps answers?
I'm ready for questions. I'm ready for more. I'm ready to dive in.
Excellent. We always get 2 questions from Twitter and 2 from our patrons on Patreon. We're going to go to Twitter first. Jay from Nowhere says, do midi-chlorians scale in accordance with the size of the host? If a higher count means more force, one would expect a Wookiee Jedi to be more powerful than Yoda when that's clearly not the case. I suppose somebody could make a really controversial case that Bryaga is more powerful than Yoda. Perhaps we will see that. Ken, where do you go with this one?
Well, this Jay from Nowhere. You probably thought this was like a simple, fun question, and it's been on your mind. This one challenged me. Science challenges me in the sense of, like, my high school chemistry class is where I learned to play poker. And I was a good student, but this stuff a little over my head sometimes. I'll learn to play poker with my friends in the back of class, which, by the way, the teacher kind of knew and let us do. Interesting discussion. So I sometimes get a little not intimidated, but like really want to think, like, okay, that's a great point, Jay from Nowhere. What would happen here? So my answer is this, Joseph. On a stat sheet, yes, that makes a ton of sense. If you're putting together your D&D character as a Jedi or looking at the back of the baseball cards, yeah, that kind of makes some sense. But I just go to this idea of, like, hey, it's how you let the Force flow through you, right? Like, and that's a very generalized way to look at it. Yoda is just connecting to every midi-chlorian he has, where someone like a Gungi or Bryaga, yeah, maybe they're still learning and going. I love that the example that George said of, like, hey, anyone can play basketball, just other people have just more innate skills and an affinity for picking it all up. I kind of think that's kind of how it goes. It's all there. You might have thousands upon thousands of midi-chlorians, but do you know how to connect to them is the big difference.
Yeah, I think, it's not necessarily the count, but how you use them is one way to approach this for sure. And I like the storytelling that we've had in the High Republic where, different characters aren't as innately connected to the Force. Like Reath Silas starts off as, like, connection to the Force for fighting is not easy for me. It doesn't make sense, and I try. Or, great stories about Imri of, like, he doesn't connect strongly to the Force this way, but he connects strongly to Force that way. So I think thinking about it as, like, yeah, it's science or fantasy or whatever. It's all a metaphor for, unlocking your full potential and finding out what's blocking you from connecting the most to who you are and to the larger truths of the galaxy, all that. I also think, kind of getting into the, like, all right, let's put on our nerd hats and have some fun with this, right? I don't think the count scales to the size, right, necessarily. Like, so we are talking about microscopic beings, right? So Yoda, even though he's smaller, it's not like he doesn't have enough room. He still has more midi-chlorians than, Bryaga. Sorry, Bryaga. So I think Yoda is smaller than Bryaga, but I think Yoda's midi-chlorian count is higher than Bryaga's,
Loved it. No, yeah, absolutely. Like, your number's your number.
Yeah. It's like if Yoda has a smaller storage space, but he's got more stuff packed in there. And Briaga's got this big storage space, but he's got some couches. It's nice. It's artfully decorated.
Yeah, I love that, which goes back to my thought up top of just like, yeah, you might have 20,000, but can you connect all 20,000? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
I like that a lot. And I think there is room for like really fun debate and thought about this, partially because Lucas himself has talked about how Anakin's Force use was diminished after losing his limbs, but Vader is still plenty powerful. And I think you can go to the technical, or you can go a little bit more to the spiritual, right? It was Anakin's connection to the Force damaged by his choices,
It's funny, and I think going back to 99 when the concept of midi-chlorians was introduced, obviously a lot of people had a lot of issues with it, and it is that kind of idea of we all kind of maybe thought it was more spiritual than technical, and I think George is saying, hey, it can be all of it, it can be both, but I understand that. I was one of the ones of like, well, what are midi-chlorians, sir? I myself had that question, but then you just made me a great thought. Yeah. Are they located in different areas? So if you lose a leg, do you lose some? Is your number down?
Yeah, I think Lucas has directly said, I would have to look up the quote. I don't have every Lucas interview on file, but I feel like he has said things that are close to that. Like, he lost some of his connection to the Force. He's diminished.
Absolutely. That Star Wars Archives one, the prequel era one, has got a lot of that great stuff in there. Yeah, I just love it. Oh man, I lost my ankle midi-chlorians. Gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny to think about on a technical level. And when Lucas says that, it's like, he lost all his arm. Midi-chlorians. But I think for me, I know that the midi-chlorian can pull toward the scientific and the technical of like, okay, the Force is we even did a sketch for a convention, at one point. I think it was Wedge questioning Luke, and it's like, why do you get to be everything? And it's like, oh, because the Force, the midi-chlorians, is like, oh, you're in charge because you have a blood disease? And Luke saying like, yeah, I got it from my father. So I understand all the jokes and the pull towards making it, scientific, right?
Yeah.
But when you drill down to what the idea is of like, Anakin, through his own choices lost, has lost some of his nature from his connection to his blood, some of his connection to the rest of the galaxy. I think that to me is more powerful of, this great idea that even though there are things in Star Wars that you can get real technical about, engines, how hyperspace works, even the stuff in Star Wars that is technical and scientific always builds back to, for me, the flowing and the organic. Midi-chlorians are symbiotes living together for mutual benefit. So as much as we can ever get technical, midi-chlorians are microscopic beings that live in our blood and whisper the will of a cosmic energy field. Not super, super technical, ultimately.
Yeah. Anytime I get lost in it, I definitely go to one of my favorite little Star Wars moments in Force Awakens with Rey kind of in that fight with Kylo, closing her eyes, remembering Maz's words, and it's just kind of, that's the bumper sticker version of all of it there. Hey, it's there for you. Connect with it.
Yeah. So I think we've answered this question. Do you feel like, do you have anything else to add?
No, it was great. Jay, you probably did not think that you were challenging me, but man, it made a tough cup of coffee for me this morning.
Yeah, it's a very, very fun thing to discuss and think about. We're going to move on to our next question from James Pasqualchi. Apologies if I got your name wrong. We're going to move on to his question. James says, as storytelling evolves, it has become more important to include representation of all kinds. I remember watching the original trilogy and noticing how all of the Imperials were guys. Then Episode 7 came out, and I was excited to see female members of the First Order. Since then, we have gotten some wonderful LGBTQ characters in the books and comics. Different ethnicities are being centered on, and even Han, Luke, and Leia's presence in the sequel trilogy represents older people. What representation would you like to see? I'd like to see a wheelchair-bound character, which we touched on with Bosk's sister, and a Jedi with autism. Plus, more LGBTQ on the screen. May the Force be with you. Thanks, James, for the great question and the great thought starter. Ken, we've been discussing some of these issues of late as they've been coming up in different storytelling, but where do you go with just your own hopes and dreams for representation in Star Wars?
Well, I'll start by going back and agreeing with James of even when you go to the original trilogy, it always stands out to me now when you see the briefing room on Yavin. the rebels, and he said it's a great example of the Imperials there, but of just the rebels and the casting of the time, and it stands out to me. I cannot not see it now. And I'd like to think that's at least a good starting point to this conversation of seeing the past and learning from it and trying to always be better. So I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, and if I may throw in there quickly, just seeing the evolution of the original trilogy, not that it suddenly became incredibly diverse, but just the step forward of like Mon Mothma. Just that was impactful and important to me as a kid to see that she is the underlying definitive leader of the rebellion.
Yeah, no, I absolutely important. And you're right. I think by Jedi some steps, but always move forward. And prequels did some great things. Prequels did some bad things. And I think it's okay to acknowledge all of it and try to build forward. So to this question here of just what's out there, I would love the number one to keep improving on what is done in the sense of obviously not before, but in addition to adding more kinds of representation of just moving past some of the tropes. That and I will say like, hey, I love some of the Tusken stuff. I love kind of the whole story, but I also understand the conversation of you're sticking to a Western movie trope that maybe we could have approached in a different way. The stuff with Val, you and I have discussed too, and going and just making sure Star Wars is just hyper aware. There's no problem being hyper aware with the why of what you're doing and how one check mark doesn't mean the journey ends. And I'm not accusing any Star Wars creator of doing that, but I just think you have to be extra careful. You can't just say Val's here. You have to understand what you're doing with that character. And that's the hyper awareness that's needed, I think, to start.
No, I think that's really great to just accept that we are on a journey and want the journey to move toward more representation and more of people telling stories from their perspective.
Yeah, and I think the screen side of Star Wars has to, and I'm confident it will, but it has to kind of catch up to print. Print has done a pretty darn good job, and the High Republic is just running on all cylinders with this story. So I think it's a good way to look. All right, so specific answers, and this is kind of a great week to ask the question, but a little happy coincidence of a lot of people inspired by Troy Kotzer's Oscar win, the Supporting Actor Award. A great speech, a lot of tears in eyes watching that there. And he's already been in Star Wars, something I had kind of forgot. And I knew you were saying on the news show, like, that definitely name struck familiar. And then you look back at his work with the Tusken Raiders in Chapter 5 of Mando Season 1, and then helping create the language for Tuskens in Book of Boba Fett. And so he was there, but I was just rewatching Hawkeye, the Disney Plus series. And you got the character of Maya. Echo that's gonna have a spinoff series. And her presence in the show just worked so well in the series. Was just part of it. Just played as is. And I really was struck the second time of watching, just like it just was. And that's powerful to me. Because you want to highlight the representation, but also that's the character, and she was treated as the character.
And I think it tied so well to Hawkeye's journey, right? Of showing a different kind of representation. So much about what is in Hawkeye that I love is that there are stakes to this job that he does, right? And to see him, losing his hearing in a different way, is that was powerful.
And I think Star Wars can do that, and now you have a performer already involved in Star Wars. He was in costume. So here's an award winner who's got some now momentum, wonderful momentum in his career. Let's do something with that with Star Wars. I'd be so excited to see that. And that was just kind of a happy, wonderful coincidence to see that speech and also get this question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Did you have any other thoughts?
General quick thought of just shapes and sizes are also a good step.
Yes.
That's long been a Hollywood problem, I understand, but I love watching shows and movies from other countries and other markets where sometimes the top in shape people aren't always the only ones cast. and I think that's a little that has it's in the grand scheme of things might be overlooked and underrated as far as representation, but I think that's powerful too.
Yeah, absolutely. Shapes and sizes and ideas of even looking at faces, different ideas of what is beautiful, I
Yeah, yeah.
think is really, really important. Yeah, I think I definitely have some thoughts of ideas that I'm interested to explore in Star Wars that tie to this question. But I mean, big answer is I want everyone to be able to see themselves in Star Wars. I feel
Mm-hmm.
really lucky that I was able to see myself in Luke. That helped me a lot. I was able to see myself. I've talked a lot about Obi-Wan Kenobi in The Phantom Menace, and I want everyone to have that experience. And I want also for different real life cultural, personal experiences that people have lived in the real life to be filtered into the story of Star Wars, to
Mm-hmm.
take what people have experienced in real life and make sure that we've been talking about on the new show when we talked about this recently, making sure that representation, it's so important that it includes behind the camera to the
Mm-hmm.
directors, writers, the people telling the stories so that we get different kinds of stories. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my big picture thing. Then some specifics. I love that James mentions Bosk's sister. If anybody isn't familiar, this is a story called Tooth in Claw in the book From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back by Michael Kogi. I don't know if I'm saying his last name correctly. I apologize for that, but it's a great story. Actually, I refreshed and read a little bit of it. I don't want to spoil any of it. So if you haven't read it and you're curious, check it out. Boss Sister is a fascinating character.
Yeah.
Then other things, yeah, I think you said it so well, Ken. I think on screen needs to catch up with print, and I think one of the biggest ways is I really want to see more LGBTQ plus characters on screen, animated, great, but also in live action. That's a whole other discussion we could have about sometimes animated things being seen as less than.
Yeah.
Good, bad, or otherwise, without getting into that, culturally, I still think we sort of elevate live action as, the pinnacle. So I really want to see that in live action. I think an Afro Disney Plus live action series would be great. Do you
Oh, yeah.
do you have any? Do you think that's coming?
Afra is a live action series. At one point I thought 100%. There was some strong rumors going around, and be careful of those rumors. You never know what to trust. Never know what's wild and crazy. It just, it makes sense, but it makes sense to us as Star Wars fans who are plugged into comics and books and more. General public, with that phrase is, we always hear that thrown around, but it's something you have to be concerned about. Of how do you introduce this character? I'm not talking about her and what she represents, but just the character in general. But I look at Ahsoka. This was something that came up in the early days, even early days of ForceCenter or some of the other shows that you and I were on talking Star Wars, of could there be an Ahsoka movie? And the answer was, well, hardly anyone knows who Ahsoka is. And look where we are now. Not only Clone Wars, but hey, showing up in this show, you in Mando and Boba Fett, there's a ton of people going, who's this now? And causes them to go into a deeper dive. And now we're in a spot where an Ahsoka series, a live action, no one's batting an eye at it, right? In terms of the character. And I think you can get there with Afra. So does Afra show up in an Endor? Does she show up elsewhere? Do you even need that? Or can you just jump right in? I definitely don't think you need to slowly, you don't need to slowly work the representation in, but just in terms of the actual character. I think you start doing that. I think Afra can be there. There's so many wonderful characters to bring in. Also, Saint Star Wars pops to mind, a wonderful character. So, yeah, I'm just so hopeful. I'm trying to will it into reality.
Yeah, me too. I think it would be absolutely great. I'm very hopeful for that. Two other quick thoughts. I've always been so moved by that moment at the end of Rise of Skywalker where Lando and Janna connect and talk about, where they're from, and Jenna saying, I don't know. And Lando saying, well, let's find out. And just the kindness of that and the power of that, and that it absolutely has some real world reflections. But this idea that that's a story that has already been started in Galaxy, in Star Wars, that the First Order soldiers took people from their home, in this idea of, if it's a Lando and Janna series, live action animated, if it's Finn, if it's characters we've never met, I'm really interested in that idea being explored of the war's over. What is this journey to find where you came from? And I think it's such a great way to talk about issues of socioeconomic class within the galaxy of Star Wars, right? Because just
Mhm.
in story, who did the First Order think they could get away with taking and why, and
Right.
and obviously it's going to have reflections with real life, but you have lots of room to use Star Wars as allegory,
Yes. I think it's you said this. Just the cultural experiences are even. I don't never want to say more important, but just equally as important to this versus just hey, we have this character like that means a lot. And I talked about just how even some of the stuff in Star Wars, the Clone Wars, and just how it's dealing with real life situations helps me learn more about the real world, not just in Star Wars and hope and fear and all those big Star Wars concepts, but just like, seeing things through another person's eyes. I think Star Wars can do that. I think that's a great jumping off point. The Lando and Janna moment is one you and I really do love. Talked about it at the time. And so, yeah. And going back to the Tusken thing, I think, not to, kick the tires on that debate again, but just, there was a lot of powerful stuff in there, a lot of stark reminders of real life history and real world, but that's not, we also want to explore different endings and different lessons and different stories and the entire picture. And I understand that. And that's why I think that the cultural experience is just as important as anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing for me on this final thought is I also think I absolutely want representation. Like I said, I want everyone to be able to see themselves in Star Wars. That's the first thing. But I also just think that Star Wars has so much room to just deal with the ideas connected to diverse identities, diverse cultures, right? Star Wars definitely plays with this, but I think you could have some screen stories that's the main thing that's at stake, right? Of different cultures coming together, different forms of communication, misunderstanding because of different perspectives, cultures with different understanding of the Force. It almost feels a little bit like what they're setting up for Phase 2 of the High Republic, of the Jedi and the Republic sweeping out into the Outer Rim and encountering different cultures might get into a little bit of that that kind of storytelling of what happens when two cultures with two different perspectives or multiple cultures meet, and how do you find that common ground that connects us while also celebrating what makes us different. I think Star Wars has a lot of room to just tell that story with alien cultures created for a space fantasy galaxy.
Absolutely, it's really effective when potentially life changing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I Ken, I don't know if you're with me on this, but I'm also my true final thing is keep them older characters coming.
Yeah. I've had a good life. But as more gray pops in my beard, you think about that more.
Yep. The sequel trilogy was rich, letting us see the original trilogy heroes as older people, the leads in Boba Fett both being older human beings. Man, was that great!
Yeah, it was great. It's great.
All right. Any other thoughts, or should we take a quick break?
My thought is, you younger listeners, don't you worry, you'll get there. You'll get there.
Yep, a representation for the gray. That's what we are talking about. And representation for everyone. Great question. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back. And we are back to take our 2 questions from patrons on Patreon. We go first to Natasha Stefan. Natasha says, I would be interested to hear what approach you take when you hit an emotional roadblock with Star Wars. I lean on my fandoms during stressful times like a multi-year pandemic or worldwide political strife or just a week of bad migraines. However, that mechanism can backfire and end up hurt by the very vehicle I am using to make my escape. My team fails to qualify for a major quadrennial tournament, or my favorite musician passes into the Force, and I'm broken down by the side of the only road out of town. Right now, I'm stuck in the middle of a Clone Wars rewatch at the Reiko Hardeen arc. Our heroes just made it through the horrors of Umbara and Zygeria. Ahead lie the temple bombing and Five's death, which foreshadows Anakin's fall and the rise of the Empire. I am in control of my own destiny, or at least my own devices, so I can skip the hard parts and just listen to your excellent recaps. or I can binge Bad Batch and the Book of Boba Fett. But when every new show gives us a different view of Order 66 and drives us past previously unseen, but no less distressing roadside memorials, the dark side starts to feel like an inevitable destination. So what do you do when that happens? Do you just lean further in, maybe listen to a podcast or two about happiness and hope in Star Wars? Or do you press pause and take in some perspective along with the fresh air afforded you by your subtropical climate? You're both fortunate to have supportive partners. Perhaps they perform some elaborate Night Sister rituals or guide you through Jedi katas. I can't remember if you've previously answered a question like this. If so, please accept my apologies, though awkwardly performed by someone who has definitely not gone to Coruscanti finishing school. Thanks, and may the Force be with you. Thank you so much for this great, honest question, Natasha. No apologies needed whatsoever. We talk a lot about fear and hope in Star Wars and processing the darkness, but I don't think we've ever really talked about this specific idea of you're challenged by the world. You're going to your comfort place, Star Wars, and you left off at a really, really dark section. Yeah. And the thing that you're going to for comfort is also bumming you out. I think that's a really interesting question. So where do you go with that, Ken?
Well, first of all, I was going to say, Natasha, that's one of my favorite questions ever received, just in terms of writing style, humor and honesty. Great job on that question. Love that. And I think this is a question that might just best be answered by a entire fleet of ForceCenter listeners, and how you all deal with that there. Gosh, Joseph, I got to tell you, I think Natasha's given some of the best advice in this question of how, when that happens, you can take time to focus on what you know you need during a particular time, and knowing when and what your limits are at a particular time. I might be, I don't know, because who hasn't sat down on a Saturday night and just said, I need a fun movie?
Right.
I've done that with Grace as well. Grab the album of the rock band that get your toes tapping, not heartbreak, that kind of thing. And so shall it be with Star Wars, I guess. But I have to confess, like, I'm one of the ones that just kind of, I'll watch a documentary about a disaster 5 times. I study tragedies in a different way, so I feel this a little different. And I just think when it hits me, I know. And to Natasha's point, I just know when I need a palate cleanse, and that it's important. You can find the hope in Star Wars. You can find the purpose in the darkness. You can find a path out of it through these stories. But it's okay that's the day. You just need, I don't know, porgs or Ewoks dancing, and go seek that out.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think, there are a lot of rough parts of Star Wars and events like Order 66 where, it is relevant to different characters' journeys. So we kind of go to that, but it has this almost different vibe because, like, if you're really affected by that story, it's revisiting something that is rough. And if the stories are doing a good job, they make you feel it from that character's perspective. So you feel it all over again, right? Mm-hmm. So I really get that. And like the Umbara arc in particular for Clone Wars, I think that's one of the things that hit me really hard. It is so well done. It's so well structured to make me just want to scream at the screen of like, he's giving you bad advice and it, or bad orders and it, just don't do it, go rogue. So like I've definitely had some times where I have, there was that time where Netflix was rattling the saber that they were going to take the Clone Wars off. And I dropped what I was doing and I watched a bunch of it, and I skipped specific arcs because it's like, I'm not in the place for them. Right. And my wife and I do that a lot when, we discuss what we want to watch, and we've made a bunch of different lists of movies we want to watch. And there's a ton of them on there that are like, we want to have seen this. And we have no doubt it is an exceptional film. We can't handle it tonight, So there's a lot of heavier films that like we don't prioritize because of this kind of thing of knowing what you need out of art at a specific time. Yeah. And for me, sometimes what I need is to lean into a darker thing. Yeah, I've talked a lot lately about I got a lot of comfort from Empire Strikes Back as a teen and a young man because I felt like I had a lot of pain and I didn't know how to express it or ask for help. And seeing characters I love also being in pain felt honest, and I felt seen. I could not have expressed any of that at the time. I just thought it was cool. Right. But that's what it was doing for me. And I'm still that way sometimes where like a couple weeks back, I was like, oh, hey, what if I just listen to some sad music? That's great.
Yeah.
Because it just felt like accepting honestly, like I'm sad right now. And, and finding the art that you need in the moment. So I definitely have had times where like I want to lean into sad or dark. And then other times, like I know I need to watch something that's going to pick me up. And I think it's just fine to know what you need and pick that for your viewing to help you out.
Yeah, I'm with you too, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm over here like give me pain. There's things I just I don't watch. I don't love horror films because I just don't like being scared. I don't like it, and it affects me. And I think I want to be clear. I have things I don't go to as well. But to Natasha's question of when Star Wars hurts, there you go. That's a good topic. And what do you get out of it? And I'm a little like you too, where it's like. I sometimes need to go dance with the pain that hurts me the most, so I can maybe hopefully know better how to process it, how to move forward, and that does not work for everybody, and not work for everybody all the time. And I think that's just it's okay to say that, and it's okay to be feeling that there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, I am also enjoying some of the Star Wars stories that are set during the Imperial era, where there is a ton of darkness, but it's inspiring then to see characters find hope. We've talked about it a lot on our Bad Batch discussions, right? Like that show is really walking us through and going, here's how this planet is being horribly affected by the Empire. Here's how this planet, here's where the dime drops on this planet that the Empire is not great. And yet through it all, there's this happy little weird family, munching on space treats. And like that, I understand. And I'm not saying that's just the answer for anybody listening. But I think for me, that is what I ultimately celebrate about Star Wars. And I think what is so important is that stories show you that you can strive to find hope in dark times, and not saying that that's just prescriptive and that people should just see that theme in Star Wars and be okay. Because I think Natasha's pointing out a really good thing. Even sometimes when there's the germ of hope, a little flower of hope in the darkness, sometimes you don't want to roll around in the darkness. And I think that makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
No, we've been focusing on this idea lately of, Star Wars is kind of, this is very general, just the idea of Star Wars is about what could be. And so therefore I kind of think there's always hope to be found. And you and I talk about, obviously hope is the big thing in Star Wars. And we say hope and fear, hope versus fear. But I love hope, finding hope in the fear and in the dark times is where I take a lot of inspiration from. But again, some days you just got to see some porgs fly around, and that is just as important.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to watch, Return of the Jedi and end on a nice upbeat and watch those Ewoks dance.
Yes.
Natasha does also ask a little bit about, our lives here in California. We're both lucky to have supportive partners. We're both lucky to be able to walk outside most days without horrific weather attacking us, which is an experience that I did have in Minnesota. I'd like to walk outside. The air does not want me to right now. So we are very, very lucky. Do you have things that you go to, Ken, for just like you kind of need to shake the cobwebs off? Do you go for a walk? Do you have any other non-Star Wars films that are like your treats to help you recenter? What kind of tricks do you have up your sleeve?
They're all depressing. They're all depressing films. It's funny, and it's raining here today. After last week, it's like 90 degrees. I've sweat in my studio when we're recording. Today, it's raining, and it's a cold rain. People, don't make fun. I am a big walker. I'm a headphones in. Let me go just listen to music and daydream and solve all my problems or just get out, which is why I failed to really analyze the Dooku Jedi Lost story, because I was trying to listen to that on walks and I just didn't hear half of it because I was off in dreamland. So I do that a lot. And then just, video games are a dangerous thing. I really, in terms of just addiction, you and I have talked about that. You've been open about, you sometimes really love video games. It can affect you. But it is, as long as it's measured, I think I do. Grace, she's so wonderfully supportive, but I had to finally say, like, hey, I'm just not playing my, as you call them, my video games to ignore. I am drifting away. I am barely paying attention to what is on the screen. It is a little bit of a meditation when I'm managing a baseball team or riding around the dusty plains of Red Dead Redemption 2. I just can't do it for 6 hours like I want to sometimes, but it helps. And then working out. Now I just feel like I'm listing all the things I do in life, my vices. But working out is not just about health and everything. It is a time to be alone for a half hour, 45 minutes to an hour, whatever, and concentrate on what I'm doing in that moment, and put everything else aside. So that's a little bit what I do. And then I go back to the painful, hurtful media that just breaks my heart.
I am similar. The video games can get frustrating, but if you have a game that you really know, right, and even like with like Red Dead, or just like I'm collecting flowers, maybe I'll run into an animal, whatever. That can that be a meditation? Because you're engaged, right? But it's this different part of you. So I recommend, if possible, for myself, getting in touch with my body, moving around in whatever way that I can. Walking is great, and I am lucky to be able to have that available to me. Is sometimes riding a horse. I haven't done that in a long time, but that sounds nice. My Red Dead Redemption and not do anything but just ride around on the horse and listen to music. That might be great. Final thing is, I think people have strong and different opinions about this film. But if anyone's ever looking for a pick-me-up film and they kind of want to watch something Star Wars related, I'm a big fan of the film Christopher Robin, starring Ewan McGregor. Lots of great memes, but also the actor who portrayed C.O. Bibble. It's a Star Wars reunion, and that is just a great, lovely pick-me-up film.
I'm really trying to think of the answer I can give for that, like my version of it. But it's like I listed, like my therapist years ago wanted to know my top 10 favorite movies at the time in the late 2000s. And I gave him my list, and he was just like, we got a lot to talk about. We got a lot to talk about. So it's usually Star Wars. It's usually Return of the Jedi. Yeah, no.
And for some people that movie is Halloween, which is everybody's different. Totally understandable. Any final thoughts, Ken?
No. Great, Natasha. Great question. We might have to revisit this, and I'd love to hear other thoughts from listeners, even just in Discord, of how Star Wars can affect you and how you get past that. And it's an interesting, valuable question. And finally, like, this is what I love Rise of Skywalker. I always say it continues to make me cry because I call it a spiritual journey. I think there's something for me when they get to the end of that, and it is all of us getting to a certain point in your life, and despite the losses, despite the pain, still feeling connections and still being there, present, and still moving forward. That's one of the reasons I love the end of that movie, just that movie overall, so much.
Yeah, so many beats. But, Alone Never Have You Been. That gets me every time and helps me every time. I did think of one other thing. We've talked about this in context of sort of getting caught up in the discourse around Star Wars. I also think that it's great to recognize that our relationship to Star Wars is multifaceted. It's not just viewing. Everybody has a different way that they've brought Star Wars into their lives. And I've sometimes had some moments where I'm getting grumpy, and then I just see a picture of an action figure or one of my own action figures, and I'm just like, oh yeah. That's what I love. So I think there's also, try to, if watching the next run of episodes might not be what you need, maybe Star Wars can be there for you in a different way if you reconnect to it in whatever way, other ways you bring it into your life.
Love it.
All right. Great question. Going to move on to our final question from Michael McCarsell. Michael says, hey, ForceCenter friends, we've had a few specific Star Wars stories adapted into multiple media, like the Lost Stars manga. Personally, I tend to lean towards visual storytelling over novels. I find being able to see everything helps me more deeply invest in the story. The High Republic comics actually helped me a great deal when reading The Fallen Star because I already had a significant understanding of the layout of Starlight Beacon. So I guess my question is whether you think they should do more adaptations of stories we've already gotten in novel form into a comic or manga. Do you have any stories in particular that you'd like to see adapted? Thanks. May the Force be with you. Ken, where do you go with this?
I mean, I love this. I love this question. Love the ideas. I own a lot of these. I recently bought the Leia Princess of Alderaan manga at my comic shop, but I haven't read them yet. This is weird. I think I have that collector mindset of, oh, I love that book. Let me put it on the shelf. So I'm going to dive into it, but I'm kind of with Michael on some of that, making the joke earlier about like Dooku Jedi Lost. Even when I read fast, but drift away faster. So it's just been a thing my whole life. I'm big reader as a kid, but like I have to read in smaller chunks at a time. Otherwise, I just kind of get oddly bored and I move on. So I think it helps having pictures. Like I've enjoyed the High Republic era where I can, even with Geode, I can be like, oh, that's what Claudia Gray is picturing. And it helps me. It helps me a lot. So I've enjoyed that. So other stories, I wouldn't mind. I don't even know if it even has to be just other books. I mean, I love even when Star Wars comic adaptations of movies is pretty powerful to me too. It retells a story in a different way. So I'll take all of them. I think I'll keep collecting them, whether I read them or not. I'll keep collecting them.
I just picked up the High Republic one, the Edge of Balance, right?
Yep.
I've picked up a lot of them because I really like the visual storytelling. I like things being told in multiple formats, but. Yeah, regardless of what the visual style is, I would love to see some of the novels presented, in visual form. I love what Michael is saying about, people perceive things differently, process things differently. So wanting to be more visual makes sense. It would be easy to just kind of turn this into a list of the books I like. But I think Rebel Rising has a lot in it that would be really valuable to people. I think could really connect to that. That I think that just is such a powerful story of Jyn in those really important formative years. A lot of great connections with Saw. I would love to see. Resistance Reborn is an interesting novel to revisit now that it came out before Rise of Skywalker, and there's a lot in there that kind of connects some dots, and I would love to see that story reach more people. A huge one for me is Dark Disciple. I would love to see that translated because its history of being something that started as visual. And I think that story is so great and it has so many incredibly important, interesting ideas in it, and just quality time with Gwendolyn Voss and Asajj Ventress. I absolutely love to see that one. And final one for me, another novel that I really enjoy, a story I really enjoy, is Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice. Mostly, I just want to see an artist representation of a young Kenobi riding his first Varactyl. Spoilers for that book. There's some Varactyl riding, and I'd like to see it with my eyes.
Yeah, you know what I would love to, because I would love to revisit the story, because the book, I loved so much in it, but at the time wasn't sure what I was getting and what it was going to do. I was a little caught up in what it could mean for Last Jedi. But the Legends of Luke Skywalker book by Ken Liu, which just goes, all wonderfully over the map with some just imaginative scenarios and situations and creatures and characters, like to see what it means, we'll see the image of it. I think I'd love that more than I think I would have thought at the time.
You are in luck. There is a manga of that.
What?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I picked it up, and I picked it up because I had that same thing of like, I gotta see this.
Okay,
literally see this, and I haven't read it all the way through. I flipped through it exactly in the way that Michael's describing. Of like, how do they picture this? How do they picture that?
See, there you go. Ask and you shall receive. I think, there it is. Let's go. Let's look at the manga. Do I add to cart right now? I think I do.
I think we have a live adding to cart. Go and post and add a big click and then or added to cart.
Price to go too. I'm gonna do that. Yeah, no, that's great. See, there you go. There you go.
A live purchase is a great way to wrap up this episode of Cues of the Force. Thank you all so much for these great and insightful questions. Ken, where can people find us?
Hey, you can find us on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. We're on Instagram and YouTube as well. On April 8th, if you're listening in order of the show and you're not a couple years ahead, we'll be doing another live Q&A, Force Center on YouTube. Facebook page is Force Center Podcast. Podcasts available on a lot of different spots, including Acast, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and more. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And you can support us directly at patreon.com/ForceCenter. You can follow me at Ken Napzok or go to my website, kennapzok.com, for updates on all things I do. Potentially adding some comedy shows soon and maybe some fall swings through places like Nashville and Atlanta and stuff like that. Stay tuned if you care. Joseph, you.
Yeah, you can find me Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can check out all of my other comedy adventures on my website, Joseph Scrimshaw, links to josephscrimshaw.com, links to shows I've written for, plays I've written, my other podcast, Obsessed, all sorts of adventures, and hopefully some shows in the future as well. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for all of the characters that we would like to see pictures of, this has been Questions of the Force.